I spoke to a mechanic last week who told me he has replaced 3 engines this month. 3. Not because of crashes or because someone forgot their oil change, but because a plastic part that costs $160 cracked inside the engine block and dumped antifreeze straight into the oil. No warning light, no leak on the driveway. Just a $7,000 phone call out of nowhere. And every single one of those cars was a Ford. Now here is the part that made me lose sleep over this. Ford knows. BMW knows. Volkswagen knows. They have been sued over it. They settled quietly. And not one of them has issued a recall. Not one. So what is this mystery part? It is a water pump, the most boring component in your engine. All it does is push coolant around so your motor does not overheat. For decades, this thing sat on the outside of the engine where you could see it, bolted to the front, spun by a belt. If it went bad, coolant dripped on your driveway. You noticed. You paid $300 to $500. Done. But somewhere around the 2000s, a few automakers looked at that simple, reliable setup and thought they could do better. What they actually did was engineer a financial trap that has wrecked thousands of families. Unless someone tells you how it works, you will not see it coming until your engine is already dead. Here is how the trap was built. In the 1990s, car companies started obsessing over engine bay packaging. Every inch mattered for crash ratings, aerodynamics, and manufacturing cost. Ford, BMW, and Volkswagen all landed on the same idea around the same time. They took the water pump off the front of the engine and tucked it inside, driven by the timing chain instead of a belt. The engineering pitch sounded reasonable. Fewer accessories up front, one less belt to maintain, and a cleaner, tighter engine package. But nobody in the boardroom asked the mechanic's question. What happens when this thing needs service? Because here is the answer. On a Ford Duratec engine, to even inspect this pump, a mechanic has to remove the front wheel fender liner, the coolant reservoir, the air filter box, the throttle body, the entire intake manifold, all the ignition coils, both valve covers, the engine mount and bracket, the AC compressor belt, the power steering pump, the crankshaft pulley, and finally the timing cover itself. I counted. That is at least 15 separate components pulled off the engine. 12 to 14 hours of labor just to look at a pump. A job your father would have done with a socket set and a Saturday afternoon now requires a shop manual the size of a phone book and a second mortgage. But Ford did not just bury the pump inside the engine. They positioned it directly above the oil pan. So when the seal on this thing fails, and it will fail because the impeller is made of plastic that gets brittle after years of heat cycling, the coolant does not drip onto your driveway where you might catch it early. It drains directly into your engine oil. Coolant mixes with oil. That milky cocktail gets pumped through every bearing, every journal, every cylinder wall in the motor. And by the time your dashboard finally throws a warning light, your engine is already cooked. One Ford Edge owner described it perfectly. He said the only symptom was his cabin heat flickering off and back on. 5 minutes later, every light on his dashboard lit up. 5 minutes. That is all it took to go from a normal Tuesday commute to needing a new engine. Quick question, are you enjoying this video so far? Please give it a like and kindly subscribe to this channel. We unlock the darkest side of your favorite brands. Alright, it gets more infuriating. The pump itself is a $160 part. The labor to replace just the pump before any engine damage runs between $1,500 and $2,000. But if the coolant reaches the oil before you catch it, and it almost always does because there's no external leak to see, you're looking at a full engine replacement. And that bill? $3,000 to $9,000, depending on whether you go used or new, on a vehicle that might only be worth $12,000. Expensive does not begin to cover it, and Ford is not alone in this. BMW has used plastic impeller water pumps across almost their entire lineup since the late 1990s. The E36 series was so notorious for cracked plastic impellers that every BMW mechanic in America started telling customers to swap them for metal impeller aftermarket units at the 80,000 mile mark. The metal upgrade costs about $45 more. $45. That is the difference between a pump that lasts the life of the engine and one designed to shatter. Volkswagen and Audi did the same thing with their 1.8T and 2.0T engines. Plastic impeller driven by the timing belt. When it cracks, pieces float through your cooling system, jam the thermostat, block passages in the head, and your turbocharged engine overheats before you even know something is wrong. So why plastic? Same reason it is always plastic. It costs manufacturers pennies less per unit. And when you are building millions of engines a year, those pennies add up to serious money. As one BMW parts engineer put it, the manufacturer goes to the supplier and says, "You have got to deliver this part at this price. No more." The supplier cuts corners on material. The impeller becomes plastic instead of steel. And the person who pays for that decision is not the executive who signed off on it. It is the single mom at the Ford dealership finding out her Edge needs a new engine at 88,000 miles. In 2018, a class action lawsuit was filed against Ford, covering vehicles from 2007 through 2020. Affected models included the Ford Edge, Explorer, Flex, Fusion, and Taurus, and multiple Lincoln models. One plaintiff paid $7,600 for a new engine after his pump failed at 63,500 miles. Another young father, with his first child on the way, bought a certified pre-owned Edge for $15,000 and faced a $7,000 engine replacement at 88,000 miles just 10 months after he bought it. His car had been meticulously maintained by the original owner. It did not matter. The pump does not care how good you are to the car. It cracks on its own schedule. And here is the detail that really stings. Ford left the water pump completely off the maintenance schedule. Think about that. They buried a plastic wear part inside the engine, positioned it over the oil pan, and then told owners it never needs to be serviced. The class action argued the pump should last at least 150,000 miles. The judge eventually dismissed most of the claims. Ford argued there was no evidence they knew the pumps were defective. A confidential settlement was reached after 6 years. No recall, no service bulletin. And those Duratec engines? They are still on the road in millions of Fords and Lincolns, still ticking. First, find out if your vehicle has an internal chain-driven water pump. If you drive any Ford with a Duratec 3.5 or 3.7 V6, you are on the list. If you drive a BMW built between 1997 and 2015 with a conventional water pump, you are likely running a plastic impeller. The same goes for many VW and Audi 4-cylinders. Second, do not wait for it to fail. Budget for a preventive water pump replacement between 80,000 and 100,000 miles. Yes, it is expensive, and yes, it is infuriating that you have to do it at all. But $1,500 now is a lot cheaper than $7,000 after the engine grenades on the highway. Third, if you are buying used, check the service record specifically for water pump replacement. If it has not been done and the car has over 80,000 miles, negotiate the price down by at least $2,000. That is not being cheap. That is being informed. One more thing you can do right now, today, for free. Go pull your dipstick. If the oil looks milky or has a tan, frothy look to it, you may already have coolant mixing in. That is your 5-minute early warning system that no dashboard light will give you. The bigger picture. Here is the one that keeps me up at night. Automakers have figured out that if they can bury a wear item deep inside the engine, the repair cost becomes so catastrophic that most people just scrap the car and buy a new one. And that, right there, is the real product these companies are selling. Not reliability, not engineering excellence, but replacement cycles. If you found this valuable, consider subscribing to the channel and make sure you share this with someone who drives one of these vehicles. They deserve to know.